Good morning, everyone. This is Carrie Casey West coming to you from cold and chilly Santa Barbara on a cold March morning. I'm here today and have the greatest pleasure to have JHough join me. Jennifer was introduced to me by another dear friend because she has a remarkable story. And for my What's Your Story program, I want to feature some of Jennifer's wonderful anecdotes and wonderful history that I have snippets of. So good morning, Jennifer, or should I say good afternoon for you?
It is afternoon. Thanks so much for having me, Carrie. I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Yes, thank you. So before we actually say what's your story, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Jennifer
Wow, that's a little deep.
Hupp?
Um, so I was born in Canada, and one of the things about me is that, I was born almost dying within the first few months.
Mm.
And that was the first of 5 times where I either died or almost died.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it begins there. I think the significance of that is that I had to re-choose to fully live 5 times. And I think, for me, the first time I started framing my life that way was about 2 years ago. And it's kind of odd that I didn't think of it. I think I have taken for granted that I've had to choose to live. And that, and the way it occurs to me is, well, doesn't everyone have that opportunity? And not when and I realize that not when you've almost died 5 times. I mean, maybe once, when people have a car accident or something happens, but, and it's five completely different ways.
I was
So
gonna say, how old were you with the first one?
I was just born.
And so
Uh,
what happened?
and so I got this hospital-borne illness, and my temperature was 105 or something ridiculous. I should have died, but I remember to this day I don't like cold water because my mother had to put me in ice baths all the time. And so Wim Hof is out for me.
Ah,
So, so, uh, s- so just choosing, I distinctly remember, yes, I'll stay. I mean, I'm sure my mother had to do with part of that because she's so incredibly wonderful, and she was probably very wonderful then as well. And then, another time where I almost died happened in the middle of me seeing a client, and I was running a very large holistic nutrition practice in Canada, an integrative clinic. And this, is doing a reading on someone. And I'm telling you, my brain just turned into a marshmallow, like a jellyfish. And all of a sudden I was, garbling my words. And then what happened was I tried to make it upstairs and I ended up falling in a puddle on the floor, throwing up, and my staff saved my life, basically. If no one was there, I probably would have died. I had meningitis,
oh my God.
and I was in a coma for 3 days. And I remember lying on a gurney in a hospital room. It seemed like it was very stark. And the first time I opened my eyes was I heard voices in the room, and I remember opening my eyes, and on the left of me was uh the man who I had fallen in love with, and on the right of me was my husband who I was in the process of divorcing. So I thought I had gone to heaven.
So it's
And I
true
thought to
then.
myself, this is a miracle. This is a miracle. All I
Mhm.
needed to do is see that happening. And I mean, I'm sure there's some aspect of the, I mean, I'd love to make something up about the amount of love coming from both of them actually waking me up, which I'm sure is true somehow. But that's not what I got from that awakening. What I got from that was anything is possible. Everything is possible.
Wow.
when there's love present. Anything and everything is possible.
Wow.
And so it's almost like I knew it was going to be okay when I saw that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there were other times. There's a crazy time that had nothing to do with anything medical. I was hiking in the middle of the Cape Breton area of Nova Scotia, which is stunning. Everyone should put it on the bucket list. But I was
Yeah.
riding motorcycle with my former husband, the same one that was on the right, and we ended up at this gorgeous hotel. I love this hotel right on the coast on a cliff, and I decided to hike. And I knew that we were right by the ocean, but I assumed that people had groomed the trails well enough that I was walking on the trail, and it seemed like there was nothing on the way. It seemed like a little scruffy, but it was still a trail nonetheless. And I was I didn't hear the ocean, but I split these two cedar trees, and if I had taken one more step, I would have fallen about 200 feet to my death.
Oh no.
And I just stood there with my heart in my, you know, how your heart comes
Oh
up into
yeah.
your mouth.
Yeah.
And I just stood there. It was a stunning view. I thought,
You almost became a part of it.
yeah, yeah, stunning in a different way in
Oh
that
my
case.
gosh.
So,
Oh my God.
so, but I remember it's thinking to myself, life is so fragile. You know, it's so fragile. It's so moment by moment. I was riding a motorcycle in a place where there are moose, and moose kill motorcyclists. But instead of that, you know, we saw a mother and a baby. Instead of chasing us when we drove up on a motorcycle, this moose mommy and baby walked right in front. It was just spectacular. So there before the grace of God. And what happened to me is, how many you is this question started formulating in me. What is the greatest thing I can do with the skill sets that I have
Mm,
that would make the biggest difference before I die, that would
mhm.
have me leaving this life feeling really fulfilled? Like that question, there are many other events that led to me formulating that question, but I am absolutely positive that those 5 times where I almost died were integral. There was another, you know, I almost died of meningitis as well. And at
Wow.
one point I had migraines, so meningitis migraines and
Yeah.
migraines. And I ended up running the largest holistic nutrition practice, as I was saying before, in Canada, right? And I remember thinking to myself, gosh, so many people suffer this way. And I just happen to have this brain that chooses to be fully alive. And because I choose to be fully alive, I'm vigilant for answers. Victimhood doesn't even occur to me
Yep.
because I've chosen to fully be here. And as a result, I ended up working with migraine clients from all over the world
Oh wow.
and transcending my own migraines. And it didn't
Wow.
come nutritionally, by the way. So there's something to fully choosing to be here
Mm,
that has the brain, has that reticular system in the brain that when you command to that system that there's a way that you want to live, it actually sets up what you're vigilant for. Therefore, I'm not vigilant for protecting myself. I'm actually vigilant for the phrase, you know, if I was going to represent it with a phrase, it's like there's always a way.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just an interesting way to live your life.
Wow. Wow. Boy, what an origin story you have, like dying almost immediately. You barely got here and you decided you had this opportunity to say, I am gonna stay. You know, I'm not gonna, how powerful, what a powerful choice to make from day one.
Really and truly, I mean, from how many people get the chance to do that? get the chance to say, no, I'm staking my claim on this life.
Well, and let me share a tiny bit with you
Mm,
about why that is even more significant to me, if I can. Uh,
please.
I worked in the entertainment industry, and it occurred to me that when we jump into a movie, when we jump into a book, we don't start from the very beginning of the protagonist's life. We're jumping in center stage, part two, act two, wherever the story begins, wherever the story arc begins. And
Hmm.
so it occurred to me that the day we are born, we are landing in a play that's already happening.
Hmm.
Our parents have already built a story in a life, siblings, grandparents, whether you're adopted, all these things. I had a client whose mother died in birth, and somehow it got into her head that it was her fault, that if she hadn't been
Mm,
born, her mother wouldn't have died.
right.
And so to know that so she had to unpack what was going on with her mother and her father all before the time she made her grand entrance. It's like we're
Hmm.
waiting in the wings. We're waiting in the wings for our cue, and we walk onto stage. We're bare naked. It's cold. The lights are everywhere. We hear all these sounds we didn't recognize before. And what do we do with all of that? As this teeny tiny little infant, what do we do with all of that? And for you to put yourself into a situation that you made the choice to stay, I am so curious about your family and how the rest of the story goes. So maybe we can have that conversation another time, but what a brilliant start to your life.
Sure. And, even walking onto the stage, a stage where, my mom and my dad had a little bit of excited anticipation that I was a boy. So there's
Mhm.
a little bit of the energy of, oh, it'd be
Yeah.
so great to have a little boy. And then here's this girl.
Yes,
But,
yes,
there's all sorts of energy that we walk into.
yep.
And for me, it's like that beautiful set of prose that starts with, I want to be all used up when I die.
Mm,
I've
yes.
had the opportunities have been plenty for me to choose to be all used up when I die. And so, it's not that it's not that I'm burning myself out. It's that there's so much to discover. I call that sort of the cosmic 3-year-old
Yes,
attitude, where
yes,
it's all a big adventure and you're living in wonder.
yes.
And when we go on the adventure and we're in wonder and we're curious on that adventure, at least for me, it has allowed me to have a deeper experience of all the places that I go and all the people that I meet. I'm authentically curious about, we had a great chat the first time that we talked, and there's an authentic curiosity about someone's life. It fascinates me. And then I start asking the question in my mind, I wonder, I wonder what's the greatest thing they can do with the skills they have. Gosh, and then where it led me to next was, gosh, I wonder if everyone was like an instrument in a symphony and we were all asking that same question, what the symphony of life would look like. Would it look different than it looks right now if people didn't feel disempowered or afraid? And I think the answer is yes, it would
You
look
know,
very different.
you and I don't know, we're on similar wavelengths. We use different language a little bit. When I work with my clients, I tell them your sole purpose is to bring your A game to whatever you do,
Mhm.
and that will inspire others to bring their A game.
Right.
It
Right. It
really,
will. It absolutely does. It also creates when more people start to play, in your words, an A game, or when
Mhm.
they become the Olympic athlete of the instrument of their life.
Yep.
the symphony becomes incredibly compelling. So those around us, when they hear that music playing, they become compelled. It's like the Pied Piper of you coming in. That symphony is like a Pied Piper for
Yeah.
uh, being breathed by the dream that's dreaming you, right? And there is a dream dreaming all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to that, it's very interesting to me how the brain works. That's sort of a wormhole I went down when
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I was fully choosing to be here, and I'm a bit weird that way because I'm so passionate about it. And I wanted to understand the brain, and then I went into physics. I just wanted to understand the foundations of life, right?
Yeah.
So about the brain is set up to either be in fight and flight, i.e., victim of your circumstances. But when you consciously choose to and understand that it's just a part of your brain, it's just a habit.
Yeah.
It's not a default way of being that you can never get out of,
Right.
you know. So that means when you're, as my friend Satyan says, it's like you're a conscious being with choice. So if you're a conscious being with choice, what that means is you can choose not to go that way, but that reticular center is very interesting because as soon as you redirect it to not being in victim mode, what happens is it becomes available for ideas,
Yep.
right? And then if we combine the laws of physics with that, the laws of physics say whenever there's a problem, there's always a solution. That's just entanglement theory.
Yeah.
And people are either arguing on the side of the problem, right? And so that goes in a circle. That's people going around in a circle. And I've seen myself do that many times when I've been in survival, in that amygdala, kind of fight or flight state. And I've had lots of reasons to be there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like everybody.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, the solutions are instant. It's not a time-space reality thing. Entanglement, the smallest particles of life, what I discovered in my little process, the smallest particles of life, those quantum particles, if there's a problem, there's no time before there's a solution. The both, in order for the equation for the universe to work, have to exist at the same time. So are we going to stay in it's don't you find it fascinating that like people are just so compelled by blabbing about the problem, and we're as a society, I wouldn't say I'm untrained, but I would say over 90% of the population is so untrained to have the permission to be vigilant for the solutions.
Yeah.
Even that tweak, even that, because it exists. Entanglement says it exists. It is there.
Yeah.
So what a change for humanity it would be if we weren't distracted and polarized and called by the craziness of that just almost sometimes shiny object, uninescapable, magical problem,
You you are, oh my God. I just want to jump through the screen and give you a hug because again, you say a lot of what is in my heart. This is in my heart. When I thought about, because I have gone through therapy and workshops and
Mm,
all kinds of healing journeys, because I had a very, very traumatic, I almost died as a child, but because due to neglect
wow.
and then my older sister tried to kill me. So,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
completely different circumstances, but to come out of that trauma and to find footing, I found that it doesn't have to be hard.
No.
And when I saw it, and it can be fun, and
Yeah.
talking to you and hearing you, it feels like fun. And the way I framed it is because so much of us understand the storytelling process, and there's something about stories that formed. I talk about the brain too, and how the brain, when the brain is wants coherence and order and understanding, because that's our higher functions, and we're
Hmm.
all given to understand and have the knowledge. So when our brain doesn't have the information, it fills in the gaps. So,
Yeah, we definitely share a brain cell, my friend.
yeah, if
Yeah.
you don't have, I mean, think of how many times when you're even as adults, I saw it in the workplace where people would be sitting in their cubicles and their boss would walk by and not say hello to them, or walk into a meeting and close the door. And they'd sit there, and I even heard one person call his wife and say, "Oh my God, my boss went into a closed door meeting. I wonder if they're talking about me." And I thought,
Right.
how do you make that leap? But as children, we make that leap.
That's
And
the way the brain is designed that
yes,
way. In
yes,
order for us to get by every day, we're
yes,
doing it without even knowing it. I mean, our eyeballs, like it looks like I'm looking at you right now. And it also, I might see on the periphery a whole bunch of things, but even the eyes are only seeing what your pupils are facing. And it's so crazy to think that I'm not seeing my pictures over here and my chairs over there. It's that my brain has a history of knowing that I'm actually only looking at you, and all the stuff that I perceive that I see is actually, now this is so crazy. It's inferred by your brain. It's
yes, yes,
crazy,
yes,
right? So
yes,
it
yes, yes.
it so reminds me of that got the man that was sitting on my left holding my hand when I came out of the coma. When that man, when I met him, there was an energetic connection that I didn't understand.
Mhm.
And I came to know that it's just like a soul connection, not soulmate, but just this marriage of the hearts that was instantaneous. Past
Yeah,
life, who knows? It doesn't even matter. It's just that it was such an incredible feeling. And I remember being in the relationship and thinking to myself, love is enough. So I projected that, this kind of love is enough for me. Like we could find our way through anything. We could work our way through any problem. We can, you know,
mhm,
and
yeah,
I just thought it was enough. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, he was speaking to a psychic who not was basically picking up on his greatest fears rather than who I really was,
mhm,
because this guy didn't really trust love, and I was blind to it because I just projected that he was just like me.
yeah,
And then what happened is one day he up and went to India, and I couldn't get a hold of him, and he broke up with, he had a conversation of breaking up with me, and within a week he was gone. So I had
oh my,
no way of processing. So my brain had to fill in the gaps. And the gaps that I was filling in, girl, for 2 months, I almost lost my best friend over it,
yeah,
and my general manager from all the stuff that I was filling in the gaps with about me, about love. Like I was making up, the worst was I was making up stuff about love. Love isn't enough. What if love doesn't matter? I
yeah,
went down to the depths of not considering suicide so much as I don't really want to be on the planet anymore,
yeah,
however that happens.
yeah, no,
So
no, no, I get it, I get it.
yeah, and
A
yeah, and
lot,
so we make stuff up, and our whole biochemistry follows fills in based on what we make up in our mind, and you can literally make yourself diseased from
yeah,
the filling in of the gaps.
yes, yes,
And thank goodness some redirects happened and some beautiful people happened that had me see more of the reality, had my pupils focusing in on what was actually going on.
mhm,
And all of a sudden, I started to get my life back. But,
yeah.
in this case, I'm very clear I caused my own PTSD,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. And that's what happens. I mean,
Mhm.
as children, if we don't know, and our parents in my generation, I don't know about your family, but my generation, you didn't talk to kids like they were adults. You didn't give them the information. It was usually because I said so, because I
Yep.
told you so, because I'm the mom, because I'm the
Yep.
dad. I said so. So they take away your power, they take away your ability to critically think through situations because you don't have the information. But more importantly
Yep.
is we are trained to fill in the gaps. And that's a big way that and they support our story. So if our story, it has a theme of love hurts, we're going to keep repeating that story. And whenever we have an issue in our lives around love, it's like, oh, I know that story. That story is about love hurting.
Yeah, there's another variable that this conversation is bringing up for me,
Go
and
ahead.
that's the variable which, blessed that I came in a little unicorny, right? Almost dying while just being given life, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it's a little unicorny. It's a weird way to start your life. And most people come in and we get trained and we get entrained to want to belong.
Oh,
And it becomes a value system. But in order to be our instrument in that orchestra, so that we can experience the fulfillment of being alive and playing in harmony with all of life, in
mhm.
order to be an expert at that instrument, it's trying to be a saxophone player when you were born to drum is really just an exercise in futility,
Yep,
struggle, hardship, suffering, I'm not enough,
yep, yep.
incoherence. And so what happens is that idea, the very idea, because sometimes people talk to me about changing their beliefs. I'm like, you can change your beliefs all you want. But if you're living in the paradigm, which paradigms are just sets of beliefs, if you're living in the cultural paradigm that you need to belong, you're never going to you're never going to relinquish, enough beliefs to finally be happy. You
See,
actually have to change the paradigm itself. And, it was easy for me. I had monocular vision. I had to have eye operations on my eye. I was taller than everyone else. I had curly hair when everyone else's hair was straight. I had so many things, and I'm going to say going for me to not belong, even though it sure as heck didn't feel like it at 12 years old. But I had
yep,
so many things going for me to not belong, taller than most of the boys,
yep,
that I just had to, I was forced, well, at least my perception was I was forced to acquiesce to not belonging. So I went,
yep.
okay, well then what do I want to do? And I started
Yeah,
debating, spirituality with this Jehovah's Witness in the hallway when everyone else was playing euchre in the lunchroom. And then I ended up, having great conversations with my math teacher about fractals and my physics teacher about other things. It formed my life to not belong. It allowed me the freedom to become who I really am, the flute player, the whatever I am in this life. And now I get to help people do the same thing.
yeah.
It formed my ability to assist others. But at first I thought I was getting the booby prize life by not belonging,
No
right?
kidding. Well, I've got so much to say to that. First of all, what you call paradigm, I call story.
Mhm.
Story is a collection of beliefs that
There you go.
we read over and over in our minds. But the biggest thing I want to say to you is about belonging. When you're a baby and you depend on these people around you, and we have this instinctual, it's one of the first most basic needs that we have is a sense of belonging. So how do we know we're a part of a group? We dress the same, we speak the same language, we look alike. That's why we struggle with racism in our country, because it's more complex than that. I'm going to simplify it, but one of the things is they don't look, African Americans don't look like us. So it's the first reaction when you see something, because I believe we're making energetic connections even before we open our mouths.
Of course.
So we look at body language. We look at somebody hunched over. Do they look sick and infirmed? Are they standing tall and confident? All of these things we respond to. But in your family, it's like you said, if you're in a family of a bunch of guitarists, the natural instinct, the natural feeling to belong would be, well, I got to pick up a guitar.
Hmm.
Really do want to go and play a bassoon, but I'm going to pick up a guitar because that's what everybody else is doing.
Hmm.
And our families impose that back on us. And this is just the very first sense of belonging we have. Our families impose that back on us because they want to feel comfortable with you. So they're like, why don't you pick up the guitar? They're handing you the guitar. So that way you'll fit in. Then we expand that into school. Then we expand that into greater
Of course.
society. And I was labeled the black sheep in the family probably from day one, and that's why I was rejected and treated. So, she's not exactly, it's like we went to the store and we got the wrong thing. She's not one of us. So maybe we'll just take her back and exchange her. I'm not gonna even
Well,
bother.
someone like you or me
Yeah.
causes people to rethink their relationship to life just by our pure example. So we're tree shakers by our mere existence. You don't even have to say anything. You walk in the room and you're shaking people's trees. And one of the other things they pick up on that I found out through studying physics is that we give off photons, and other
Yeah.
people actually have photon receptors on the outside of their 75 trillion cells. So they're actually picking up on the story of you as told by these trillions of photon packages of light emanating from your cells in every millisecond. And so, that's how we can make decisions about, it's not just pheromones, it's like that's how we make decisions about, our affinity for some. And so often, the way we framed it is, I want to find someone who's like me so that I can be comfortable. And I was just reading this awesome book by Adam Grant, and he said the people that live the most fulfilling lives aren't the people that look for the stuff that's comfortable. They're the people that look for stuff that's interesting and adventurous and different. They get curious about all these other things. Those are the people that live the richest lives.
Yep.
So, you know, it's an interesting it's just an interesting paradigm how pervasive, just how pervasive the need to belong is. So one of the things that happened to me in the investigation of that is I thought, yeah, I remember even in my business, I had something called the Not Belonging Club. So that
Ah,
everyone that felt like they didn't belong, I called it NBC. And I was in the middle of San Diego, and there's an NBC building there. And I just looked up, and I was with two friends, and I go, "Oh my God, look, it's the Not Belonging Club building." And they all laughed. And then I thought, yeah. And one of my clients came up and said, I don't want to be in the not belonging club. And the militant people would say, well, I don't want to be in the not belonging club because I don't even want to belong to the not belonging club, right? So then I thought, there's another paradigm bubbling here. Where do we belong? And I realized that where we belong is we belong as creation's good idea. So if omnipotent, omniscient, all seeing, all knowing, infinite wisdom was looking at every blade of grass and every speck of sand and you know, everything that ever was, every galaxy, every star system, every nebula, whatever. If consciousness, God, whatever you want to call it, is in and of all things, that consideration must have been taken in my mind prior to that spark of life that came into this lifetime. And so the coherence exists at that level. The level of belonging is that every single human came from that omnipotent, omniscient, all seeing, all knowing, perfect confluence of time space realities such that we were made alive, in three dimensions from some other dimension. And from that place, from that universal sense, not only do we all belong, but we were all meant to find the instrument that were to play. So for me, it just it just gave me peace, like my shoulders came down and I could breathe a little deeper when I realized that it's that three-dimensionally we aren't meant to belong, but multi-dimensionally,
We do
not
belong.
only do we belong, but we're expressions of this greater consciousness that are in a symphony. And to find our way back home to that and play that instrument, there is nothing more juicy.
You know, I, I'm so enjoying this conversation. What I look at, the way I dealt with the fact that if we were all alike, it would be crazy making.
Hmm.
I think about our physical bodies.
Right.
We have billions and trillions of cells in
Hmm.
our body. What would it be like if they were all identical? We'd just be one big cell. We wouldn't have unique hairstyles. We wouldn't have eyebrows. We wouldn't have eyes. We wouldn't have, and every cell, even on our nose, is different. It fills a different space. You don't want them to be alike. What would be the value of having all the cells in your nose be identical?
Weird.
They only belong because they're different. They
That's what forms the nose. That's what forms like the iris as opposed to the pupil, as opposed to the, yeah.
Right, right. And even within those, each cell takes up a different function and space in there. It's not like you want them all to be identical. You don't. You don't.
This is a symphony.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
this whole thing is a symphony. I mean, I always say to people, think of it, 75 trillion cells in your body are all working perfectly harmoniously, doing a very specific job. Imagine that those are 75 trillion individual entities working harmoniously, speaking in photons, speaking in biochemistry, working back and forth in total fluidity, because of course we're not in the way. That's all happening without us.
Yes.
And we're a living metaphor for how the
Yes.
world can be. We are the embodiment of the future potential of this world.
We-
It's 10,000 times the number
Yes.
of cells in our
Yes.
body
Yes. Yes.
is
Yes.
so wait a second. No, 10,000 times the number of people on the planet is the
Yes.
number of cells in your body. So
Yes.
1/10,000th of what's
Yes.
going on in one person's body,
Yes.
where it's working in perfect harmony,
Yes.
that's what's going on the planet. We're each living cells of humanity. And if
Yes.
this can work in harmony, then anything can find harmony.
And if you look around in nature, nature in her infinite wisdom has given us clues like this everywhere
Hmm.
of how to live in harmony. And we have been giving a blind eye to it. And instead we have, because we do have higher brain and higher thinking capacity, we don't use it as effectively as we could.
Mm.
We let all the mishigosh, we let all the story, we let the old beliefs, the old thinking, whatever you want to call it, get in the way.
Yep.
And so how do we make that shift? And that's my mission, is to give an easy way for people to make the shift and fun way to people to make the shift rather than making it feel like I'm not smart enough. Because that's what so many of these things that I see is people will look at a program and at some point, because of whatever's going on for them, they start to feel that, well, I can't go any further. There's that roadblock. And how do you get past that roadblock?